Welcome to this book review, Victors in Blue.
How Union generals fought the Confederates, battled each other, and won the Civil War. Now, Albert Castel and Brooks Simpson are both American Civil War historians. Castel specializes in historiography with a PhD from the University of Chicago and has taught at Western Michigan University. The narrative concisely describes major battles and campaigns, reviewing victorious Union generals and probing into their internal quarrels. Castel encourages the reader to base his appraisal of the commander's performance within the context of the engagement. The first chapter, the author describes how George McClellan and William Rosecrans lacked combat experience, but mentions that McClellan was luckier when facing Robert E. Lee.
One of the things that I found always very interesting about Napoleon Bonaparte is that he was arguably the best general in history, but he always had an emphasis on the importance of luck, how important that was to win battles, and he favored commanders that were luckier.
Chapter 2 explains how Ulysses S. Grant rose in the ranks by taking the initiative, but omitting the ambition of less qualified peers. Castel devotes the third chapter to the problems in forging a cohesive strategy in the West, primarily due to Henry Halleck's machinations, creating competition between Grant, Don Carlos Buell, and Charles F. Smith.
The map pictures that I'm showing are mostly from American Civil War Commander from Student Commander game series. That is our sponsor, as always, for these videos.
In Chapter 4, Grant recognized his numerical superiority and withstood the oncoming attack at Shiloh. Grant's promotion in Chapter 5 was Halleck's way of keeping him on a close leash.
I don't think we've written enough about General Henry Halleck. He's a bit of a enigma to some extent. Some authors see him as capricious and jealous, but he was very capable strategically, and obviously a great part of Grant's initial rise was due to Henry Halleck, who vouched for him, and I mean, frankly, he was one of his supporters towards Lincoln and in general. Whether the motive for that was selfish ambition or to keep him, as the author interestingly puts it, on a tight leash, then I think when it's all said and done, it's immaterial if the results are for the intelligent, successful prosecution of the war, especially at that early stage. Even as something as profound as, for example, Scripture, the Bible, Philippians 1:18, the Apostle Paul says, even if the gospel is being preached by selfish ambition, what matters is that it's being preached.
In Chapter 6, McClellan's phobia of unsubstantiated enemy superiority impeded his taking Richmond and led to Lincoln replacing him with Halleck. Though McClellan retains the fiercely loyal Army of the Potomac, his lack of initiative culminated in the bloodbath at Antietam.
If you like this video, click on like, subscribe, and share.
Chapter 7. Grant regained command of the Army of the Tennessee in the wake of Buell's failure to capture Chattanooga. Castel concludes in Chapter 8 that Grant and Rosecrans' actions at Iuka and Corinth, respectively, stemmed from mutual rivalry instead of logic. Rosecrans' victory at Stones River promoted the Emancipation Proclamation and the Confederacy losing all hope of British recognition.
Going back to the topic of rivalry and jealousy, especially amongst Union generals. Now, Rosecrans won the Battle of Stones River, and Grant was reluctant to give him that recognition. One of the final conversations he famously had with Lincoln was that he didn't, I'm paraphrasing here, though I'll talk about this in another book review that talks about this topic specifically, but he said that his opinion was that Rosecrans was not especially distinguished at Stones River, and Lincoln said something to the effect, well, we just have to disagree on that. And that was his final word. That could have been because it happened during the time of a series of battles, including Antietam, that facilitated the the Emancipation Proclamation, which was very dear to Lincoln. So he might have even had a more emotional attachment to Rosecrans. But just to say that even Grant was not beneath jealousy and pettiness, in the opinion of some authors, especially there are quite a few that see him as let's say that he's overrated, certainly. And his personality was one of pettiness. I personally don't believe that based on other things that I've read, but they are interesting points to examine.
Chapter 9 describes the crisis of command within the Army of the Potomac. Meade shadowed Lee's fixation on the decisive battle at Gettysburg, and by contrast, in Chapter 10, Grant prosecuted the great capstone federal victory at Vicksburg with a daring and patient campaign of maneuver. However, Castel disagrees with the consensus of its decisiveness. In Chapter 11, Rosecrans surely prevented his relief from commanding the Army of the Cumberland by attacking Chattanooga. Contrarily, Halleck prioritized destroying enemy forces over allowing Grant to capture Mobile. In Chapter 12, under the pressure by Washington, Rosecrans failed to adequately prepare for his next advance into Tennessee, despite George H. Thomas's ingenuity. This outcome facilitated Grant's appointment to overall command in the West.
And there it is, one of the reasons that you could see why Grant had some reluctance in supporting Rosecrans. Also because of other sources that have Rosecrans as being borderline, if not outright, insubordinate towards Grant's orders, especially during this crucial period.
Unlike Bragg, his adversary at Chattanooga, Grant favored integrity of command and good relationship with his subordinates. This attribute significantly contributed to retaking Chattanooga by unorthodox frontal assault.
A famous anecdote about Bragg is that it seems that he had a problem with authority, and he wanted to do things his own way, and he did not agree with, he did not cooperate with the other officers. One of the commanders said to him famously, "My God, Mr. Bragg, you have quarreled with every officer in the Army, and now you're quarreling with yourself." American Civil War commander reflects this going back to Halleck and Bragg, these commanders have a little note on their chits where you get demerits if you use them with other officers. They have to be really used alone. Otherwise, there's some penalties for using them. We always try to reflect individual qualities or defects that particular commanders had.
Simpson begins his contribution with Chapter 14, where he analyzes Grant's lack of rapport with the Army of the Potomac. The Wilderness was a campaign of attrition where Meade disappointed and Sherman failed despite his best efforts. Grant's failure to destroy Lee invited Northerners to question the validity of the war. In Chapter 15, Grant reformulated his strategy by having Sherman attack Atlanta from the west. Chapter 16, Philip Sheridan's turning defeat into victory at Cedar Creek cemented Lincoln's chances for re-election. Chapter 17 recounts Sherman's march to the sea and highlights John Schofield's Napoleonic qualities defending Tennessee and George Thomas' capture of Nashville through Grant's micromanagement. In Chapter 18, Sheridan and Sherman's plans competed for approval by Grant. Simpson concludes the narrative with somber episodes of old rivalries.
So one of the things that the book does quite well is it slowly starts to show the rivalries that existed between the commanders from Chapter 18 onwards, especially. We saw their interaction during battles, their record as commanders. But it all starts coming together at the end that the Union Army was not that unified, but they still got the job done. Now, whether that is because of numbers and resources or decisions made by top men like Lincoln, Grant, Halleck, remains to be seen. But it is very interesting what the authors exposed on that. If you were to, quickly glance through the book, I would recommend, glance through it, but then pay more attention from Chapter 18 until the end. That's where you really get the meat of the arguments.
The epilogue ranks the generals, concluding that Grant was the most successful, Sherman the most loyal, Sheridan the most durable, and Schofield the most intelligent. The authors confined the remaining generals to a lower class and recognize infighting as a critical deterrent to better results and recognition. Both historians see the primary role of battles in promoting deserving commanders. The leadership and communication challenges up and down the command chain posed an equal or more significant challenge than the battlefield.
So there we have it, Victors in Blue. Hope you read it and enjoy it. Let me know any comments that you have. If you have read it, I would love to know what you thought of it and your opinions. And if you have any questions about American Civil War Commander, please do visit the website. See the description below.